Yo, what's going on, guys? This is Houston Sports Talk back another video today, and today we're going to be talking about the Houston Texans potentially drafting offensive tackle from the Texas Longhorns, Kelvin Banks Jr., one-time All-American, who had a really good season this year for the Texas Longhorns, one of the best offensive tackles in football this year, playing 15 games for Texas, and is one of the early tackles that is expected to be drafted in a couple weeks. Actually, 2 weeks from today will be the NFL draft. First round, at least. Then Friday the 25th will be the round 2 and 3, and then Saturday, will be that Saturday will be rounds 4 through 7. And so Kelvin Banks is a guy that's going to get his name called round 1 for sure. He's a guaranteed number 1 overall pick, and having such a good season with Texas, the Texans need to make, a move at the offensive tackle position after trading away Laramie Tunsil. Kelvin Banks Jr. could be a good fit. And today there were multiple reports from scouts saying that the Texans have a lot of interest in Kelvin Banks and drafting him. So that definitely sparked some rumors today with Kelvin Banks Jr. and the Texans. So I think it would be interesting to see this Texans team draft Kelvin Banks Jr. I think he has potential to be a great tackle in this league. But my only question is, you look at some of the moves the Texans have made with the offensive tackle position or the offensive line this year after trading away Tunsil. Where do you put the rookie first-round pick if you draft him in the first round? Because here's the one thing I look at. The number 1 position I think you'd want him to play would be left tackle. The Texans signed Cam Robinson to a 1-year, $10 million deal. So you get Cam Robinson a $10 million deal. You'd expect him to be left tackle next year. And then at right tackle, it seems like at right tackle, it's either going to be Trent Brown, who you signed to a $5 million deal, or Titus Howard, who's been a part of this team. And you also have another veteran on this roster now in Laken Tomlinson. So you've added in vets after getting rid of Tunsil, like Robinson and Tomlinson and Trent Brown. Which if you had this offensive line of Tomlinson, Robinson, and Trent Brown a couple years ago, would have been one of the best in the league. But now that they're a little bit older, it's it's not as good. They're not as good as they were years ago. But still, Cam Robinson is still a really good player, and Tomlinson I think is still solid even though he is aging, and Trent Brown is okay. But where do you put the rookie? I think the only thing that matters is the fact that Cam Robinson is at left tackle. You sign him to $10 million. I don't think there's a way he's not going to be playing left tackle for this Texans team next year. And then you got the fact that right tackle potentially there's already a competition potentially between Trent Brown, a veteran, and Titus Howard, who was a first-round pick for this team in 2019 and has been a starter for this team ever since, being drafted by the Texans. So I don't know where Kelvin Banks Jr. would fit in his first season. And, that makes it more difficult on potentially drafting him. But I think he'd be a great addition to this team. But here's the one thing maybe you consider. Now, I talked about adding in Cam Robinson, and he's a great addition, but he's only signed to a 1-year deal. It's not like the Texans signed him to a multi-year deal, and he's the long-term left tackle. He's on a 1-year deal. So here's the one idea, but do you want to waste a rookie season of Kelvin Banks Jr.? The one idea I have is, okay, Cam Robinson starts off the year at left tackle. Kelvin Banks potentially sits for a season and learns, because he's on a team. I think this is an offensive line for a veteran. I think a veteran would, going into this offensive line room, you can learn a lot of things with some of the guys that are experienced in this offensive line. Laken Tomlinson has been in this league forever. Trent Brown has been around for a minute, and then you got Cam Robinson, who I know is a little bit younger than Tomlinson. He's definitely younger than Tomlinson and Brown, but he's been in the league for a minute. And then Titus Howard, I know he's only been in the league since 2019, but it's 2025. He's been in this league for a minute as well. So this offensive line is, most of it is very experienced. I know you got guys like Jarrett Patterson, Juice Scruggs, and, there are some other guys in this offensive line, Blake Fisher, that are, guys like that are not as experienced or younger. But there are also guys in this offensive line room that are older and veteran guys in this offensive line room. So maybe he sits for a season and gets to learn from Cam Robinson and Trent Brown and Laken Tomlinson, some vets. And then, next year he plays more in his second season. I don't know. I don't know how that would work because, Trent Brown, it seems like Cam Robinson's going to be the left tackle for the Texans next year. It's not like he can only play left tackle. You can put him at right tackle, but like I mentioned, if Kelvin Banks Jr. is at right tackle, where is Titus Howard? Because at right tackle you also have Trent Brown and Titus Howard, and then you can think about, okay, well maybe Titus Howard can move to left guard if Banks is at right tackle, but at left guard you have Laken Tomlinson. So it's definitely difficult to go over, but the Texans definitely need to add the offensive line in this year's draft. Kelvin Banks Jr. would be a really good addition, but I don't think he's a start. I don't know. It's weird because you got some vets already on this roster like Brown, Tomlinson, and Robinson, and Titus Howard. So we'll see. But a lot of those guys are not a part of the future. That's the one thing. Maybe Titus Howard's a part of the future. I don't know. We'll see. But Tomlinson, Brown, Robinson, all great offensive linemen, I think. And I think they're all great additions for C.J. Stroud to protect him this season. But the one common thing that all of them share is none of them are in the long-term plans for the Houston Texans, at least right now. All of them are signed to one-year deals. So Kelvin Banks, he can be the future of this offensive line if the Texans decide to draft him potentially. Let me know your thoughts on this potential draft pick for the Texans in the comment section, and peace out.